Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at writing the domain and range of functions and relations. So we learned in a previous video the domain is the set of inputs, the range is the set of outputs. Because we are normally dealing with equations of the form y equals something to do with x's, for our purposes, the domain is the set of values that x can take. The range is the set of values that y can take. So there's a bit of advice here. Sometimes it helps to be negative. Sometimes it helps to look at values that x or y can't take. All right, let's look first at this equation here, y equals x squared plus 1. So we're going to write the domain. So what values can x take? Well, x is being squared. You can square any number you like. So there are no restrictions on the values that x can take. X can take any value. So if we're writing it in set notation, we need the squiggly brackets because they denote a set in maths. And we actually write it like this. So this says x such that x is an element of the set of real numbers. This is just shorthand mathematical way of saying that x can take any value. So if we're writing it in interval notation, all we do is have brackets and we write the smallest value x can take and the largest x can take. Now in this case, there is no smallest or largest value x can take. X can take any value, so this just says it can take any value between negative infinity and positive infinity. So note, when writing in interval notation, round bracket means you don't include the value, square bracket, you do include the value. So we don't include negative infinity or positive infinity because they're not actual numbers. All right, let's look at the range of this function here. So what values can y take? Well, if you're squaring something, this thing here, this guy here is always positive. So y is going to be a positive number plus 1. Y is going to be any number greater than or equal to 1. So in set notation, once again, we use squiggly brackets. This says y such that y is greater than or equal to 1. In interval notation, this says it can take any value between 1 and infinity. We have the square brackets, which means 1 is a value y can take, if x equals 0, but we use a round bracket for infinity because, once again, it's not a real number. So let's look at this equation here. Firstly, the domain. Let's look if there are any values x can't take. Well, because x minus 3 is the denominator of a fraction, it can't equal 0. We're not allowed to divide by 0. So this thing on the bottom of the fraction can't equal 0, meaning x can never equal positive 3. So it's easy enough to write in set notation. How would we write in interval notation? Well, basically what we're saying is x can be any number less than 3, or it can be any number greater than 3, but it can't equal 3. That's why I used round brackets. All right, let's look at the range of this function. So you can't divide 1 by any number to give you an answer of 0. This fraction can never equal 0 no matter what value x takes. So y can never equal 0 plus 2, which is 2. Y can never take the value 2. So we write the range similar to how we wrote the domain. Y such that y can't be equal to 2, or this says it can be any number less than 2 or greater than 2, not including 2. So looking at this third equation here, let's look at values that x can't take. Well, when you're square rooting, you can't square root a negative. So what we must have is that x squared has to be less than or equal to 9. But hang on a minute, because this is a denominator, it can't equal 0. So we actually can't have x equaling 9, as then we'd be dividing by 0. So we must have that x squared is less than 9, and what that means is x is between, but not including, negative 3 and 3. And this says just that. X can be any value between, but not including, minus 3 and 3. So let's look at the range. What values can y take? This is actually quite a complicated question, which is why I've put this tip here. If you're really stuck on domain and range, you can put into your graphics calculator and look at the graph. Look at what values y can take on the graph. It turns out the lowest value this could be is if x was equal to 0. If x was equal to 0, y would be 1 over the square root of 9, or 1/3. If x is any more than 0, this thing here becomes smaller, and smaller denominator means you get a larger value overall. So the smallest value y can take is if x equals 0. When x equals 0, y equals 1/3. Y can take any value greater than or equal to 1/3, which is what this says here. We include the value of 1/3, not the value of infinity. That last one was really tough to come up with, so don't be afraid to use your graphics calculator to help you find the domain and range. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.